His voice cut through the silence like thunder. "Iron Wolf, stand by." Every eye in that training hall snapped to me. The quiet medic they'd mocked for weeks. I could feel their confusion and shock wash over the room. My secret was out. But this wasn't salvation. It was a warning. Before I tell you what happened next, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Now, let me tell you exactly how it all began. The first breath of air I took at Fort Sheridan tasted like iron and judgment. It was sharp, cold, and carried the unspoken weight of expectation. This was where the Marine Corps forged its future leaders, a place where discipline wasn't just requested. It was brutally demanded. Yet, standing at the edge of the courtyard that first morning, I felt a kind of silence that wasn't about respect. It was about exclusion. In my late 20s, a quiet transfer from the medic division, I knew I was an anomaly. My uniform was spotless, my boots polished to a mirror shine, my posture precise. But no amount of perfect presentation could hide the whispers that followed me like a shadow. Some cadets smirked as they passed. Others didn't even bother to lower their voices. Why is she even here? Probably begged her way in. Medics don't belong in leadership training. I stood motionless, hands clasped behind my back, eyes locked forward. But I heard every word, felt every sideways glance. I trained myself to treat words like weather, unpleasant but temporary. I told myself to stay calm, that their words were just noise. My real mission wasn't to win their approval. It was something deeper, something they couldn't possibly understand. Then came Lieutenant Blake Jensen. He walked with the kind of polished arrogance that comes from a life without obstacles, a man who believed leadership was his birthright. He stopped just short of me, his smirk as sharp as a blade. "Transfer, huh?" he said, his voice loud enough to draw a small audience. The family signet ring on his finger glinted under the pale morning sun. "Sergeant Mercer," I corrected evenly, my gaze fixed on the horizon. My heart rate remained steady. I'd faced men far more dangerous than him. "Not here, you're not," Jensen shot back, his voice dripping with condescension. "Here, you're just another cadet trying to keep up." The cadets behind him chuckled. One muttered something about medics playing soldier. Another added, "She probably got in on sympathy points." I didn't move. I didn't blink. I refused to give them the reaction they craved. My silence wasn't weakness. It was a shield I had perfected long ago. Because I had learned that the loudest person in the room is usually the one with the least to say. By evening, the casual dismissal had hardened into open mockery. In the locker room, I could hear Jensen replaying our morning exchange for a rapt audience. "She corrected me," he said, mimicking my voice in a high-pitched, mocking tone. "Sergeant Mercer." He let out a barking laugh, and the group joined in. "But she can't even field strip a rifle without Googling it," one of them said. "I give her a week before she taps out," another added. I sat at the far end of the bench, calmly unlacing my boots, my movements deliberate. My shoulders were relaxed, my breathing even. But inside, a cold watchfulness was settling in. As I folded my uniform and placed it in my locker, a small, heavy object slipped from my jacket pocket and landed on the concrete floor with a muted clink. Before anyone else could see it, Corporal Maya Sanchez, who I'd noticed was always watching, always observing, bent down and picked it up. It was a worn challenge coin, its edges smoothed by years of handling. On one side was a snarling wolf's head. On the other, 3 words, Iron Wolf Unit. Her breath hitched for just a moment. Her eyes locked on mine as she handed it back. I saw no judgment in her gaze, only a flicker of deep, unanswered curiosity. The name meant something to her, a whisper from a late-night briefing or a story she was never supposed to have heard. I took the coin, the cool metal of familiar weight in my palm, and gave her a slight, almost imperceptible nod. I tucked it away, locked my locker, and walked out without a word. The air was charged with a silent question, and I knew my time here was about to get much more complicated. 2 weeks passed, and the joke only sharpened. Lieutenant Jensen made sure of it. He saw me not just as an outsider, but as an easy target to reinforce his own authority. During a morning combat exercise, he singled me out in front of the entire platoon. "Careful out there, Mercer," he shouted mockingly, a cruel grin spreading across his face. Wouldn't want you bruising those medic hands. Laughter erupted across the field. I ignored it, my focus locked on completing the obstacle course. But as I hauled myself over a wall, a flash of memory hit me, unbidden and sharp. I remembered these hands, covered in sand and blood, working under the dim light of a headlamp inside a crippled Humvee. I remembered the metallic smell of fear and the frantic beeping of a heart monitor as I performed a procedure I'd only ever practiced on dummies. The memory was gone as quickly as it came, but it left a cold resolve in its wake. Let him mock these hands. He had no idea what they were capable of. Watching from a distance, I saw Corporal Sanchez observing me, her expression thoughtful. She wasn't looking at Jensen or laughing with the others. She was watching me. She saw that my attention wasn't on the insults. It was on the ridgeline behind the course, my eyes narrowing slightly as I scanned the horizon. It was a habit deeply ingrained to constantly assess my environment for threats. Later that evening, long after the drills had ended, I walked the perimeter of the base alone. My boots crunched softly on the gravel path. It was a routine I developed to clear my head, but tonight it was something more. I was looking for something out of place. My fingers traced the cold steel of the chain-link fence until I reached a corner where the woods pressed close against the boundary. High on a post, a security camera was mounted. I paused, my gaze locked on it. Earlier that day, during my run, I'd seen it. A flicker. A single, almost imperceptible 1.7-second blackout. Most people would have dismissed it as a glitch. To me, it was a signal. It was a pattern I recognized. I pulled a small, battered notebook and a pen from my pocket. Under the dim security lights, I jotted down the camera's designation, the time, and the duration of the anomaly. A familiar feeling, a cold and sharp alertness, was beginning to wake up inside me. It was a part of myself I had tried to keep dormant. That night, the base was buzzing about an upcoming strategic briefing. As cadets filed into the hall, the air was thick with restless chatter. Lieutenant Jensen sat near the front, legs crossed, that same arrogant grin playing on his lips, ready to watch the show. But just as the lights dimmed, the main projector froze. A low chime echoed through the hall. A new notification flashed on the instructor's console, overriding everything else. Restricted access login. Authorization code, Wolf01. A hush fell over the room. The instructor, frowning in confusion, tried to override the system, but it wouldn't respond. At that exact moment, my tablet, resting on the desk in front of me, vibrated once. I glanced down. The screen was black except for a single message. No subject, no sender. Just 4 glowing words. Iron Wolf, standby. My fingers froze an inch above the screen. My heart, which had been steady all day, gave a hard, sudden lurch. The blood in my veins turned to ice. Across the aisle, I saw Sanchez catch the brief flash of text before my screen went dark. Her eyes widened, her lips parting slightly as a slow, dawning realization crawled over her expression. Iron Wolf. She didn't know exactly what it meant, but she knew one thing for certain. I wasn't just another cadet, and somewhere, out there in the dark, someone had just called me back into the game. Hours later, long after lights out, I sat on my bunk in the suffocating silence of the barracks. My notebook was open on my knees, its pages filled with coordinates, timestamps, and observed patterns, the kind of details no one else seemed to notice. I had just written a new entry, Wolf01 authorization active. My mind was racing. The activation wasn't a coincidence. It was a response. My discovery of the camera glitch must have triggered a silent alarm in a system far beyond Fort Sheridan's clearance level. Miles away, in a classified operations center I knew all too well, a man in a sharply pressed uniform would be staring at a glowing console. Colonel Marcus Thorne. I could picture his jaw tightening, his fingers curling into a fist as the words pulsed on his monitor. Iron Wolf Protocol reactivated. He wouldn't hesitate. He would stand, grab his cap, and walk out of that room. Because when that call sign resurfaced, it meant only one thing. Someone was testing the fences, and they were about to find out who was guarding them. By morning, The atmosphere on the base had changed. The air felt heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. The previous night's system override was the only thing anyone whispered about. Lieutenant Jensen, however, seemed determined to maintain his bravado. Leaning against a podium in the training hall, he loudly declared, "Guess the medic's secret is out." Probably hacked the system herself. Desperate move for attention. A few cadets chuckled nervously, but the laughter was hollow. The ground beneath their feet felt unsteady. I sat near the back, my expression a carefully constructed mask of calm. But inside, my heart was hammering a slow, controlled rhythm against my ribs. Sanchez, sitting 2 rows ahead, glanced back. "Mercer," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What's going on?" "That message last night." I didn't answer, my gaze fixed forward. But she saw my hand, clenched into a tight fist on my knee. Before another word could be spoken, the lights in the hall flickered once, then twice, and died. A wave of nervous murmurs filled the sudden darkness. The power cut lasted only 7 seconds. When the lights hummed back to life, the central monitors were lit up with a new override. No code this time, just a name, flashing in stark white text. "So, Marcus Thorne, inbound." It started as a faint, distant sound, the rhythmic strike of hard-soled boots on marble. It grew louder, closer, each step a deliberate, commanding beat that echoed in the corridor. The double doors at the end of the hall swung open, and a figure walked in whose presence alone silenced the entire room. Colonel Marcus Thorne. He was in his late 40s, broad-shouldered, his chest a testament to a long and distinguished career. But it wasn't the rows of ribbons or the gleaming rank insignia that froze everyone in place. It was the undeniable weight of his command, the kind of authority earned in places from which most people don't return. His gaze swept slowly across the room, missing nothing, until it locked on me. For the first time since arriving at Fort Sheridan, I shifted in my seat. Not from fear, but from a profound sense of recognition. He stepped forward, his boots clicking sharply on the polished floor. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, but it carried like thunder. "Iron Wolf, stand by." The room held its breath. Jensen, still seated at the front, blinked in confusion. "Wait, what?" Thorne turned his head slightly, his eyes narrowing to cold, hard points. "Sergeant Ava Mercer." Front and center. I stood and walked down the aisle, my own boots striking a steady rhythm against the floor. I stopped directly before him. His expression was sharp, but when he spoke again, his voice softened almost imperceptibly. "Good to see you again, Iron Wolf." A wave of gasps and frantic whispers broke out, only to be crushed by a single look from Thorne. Jensen, trying to recover his footing, leaned back with a smirk. "Is this some kind of show?" "She's just a medic." Thorne's head snapped toward him. "Lieutenant," he said, his voice like steel. "At ease. You've said enough." He turned back to the room. "You think you know who you're training with?" 7 years ago, a covert unit executed an unauthorized extraction during the Dawson Ridge incident. 12 Marines were trapped. The mission was a loss. He paused, his eyes finding mine. Then, one operator, under the call sign Iron Wolf, led a 4-person unit into enemy territory. No support, no backup. 47 minutes later, every one of those Marines was walking again. He drew a sharp breath. "She commanded that team, and she saved my life." A stunned, absolute silence descended. Then, something incredible happened. A single cadet near the back slowly stood and came to attention, his hand snapping up in a perfect salute. Then another and another. Within seconds, the entire room was on their feet, a forest of arms raised in unison, a silent, powerful acknowledgement. I stood before them, my expression unreadable, but my presence finally, undeniably felt. They weren't just saluting a sergeant anymore. They were saluting Iron Wolf. The salutes had fallen, but the silence, thick with shock and newfound respect, lingered. Colonel Thorne stepped closer, his voice low enough for only me to hear. "They know now," he said softly. "But this isn't about them." My jaw tightened. A cold dread crept up my spine. "Then who is it about?" His gaze hardened. Someone's watching this base. Someone who shouldn't be. The words hung in the air between us, a declaration of a war I thought I had left behind. My fingers curled slightly at my sides. Then it starts again. I whispered, more to myself than to him. He gave a single, sharp nod. Welcome back, Iron Wolf. That night, the sky opened up and a heavy rain battered Fort Sheridan, mirroring the storm brewing inside its walls. I sat on the edge of my bunk, my encrypted tablet lighting up again with those same 4 words. Iron Wolf, stand by. Before I could even begin to process the implications, the piercing shriek of alarms ripped through the facility. Breach detected. West perimeter. The barracks exploded into chaos. Cadets scrambled from their bunks, orders were shouted, and sirens screamed across the compound. Within minutes, the strategy hall, once a place of lectures, was a frantic hub of activity. Thorne stood at the center, issuing commands like rapid fire. Lock down Alpha Sector. Seal the gates. Secure the armory. But a junior officer's voice cut through the noise, his face pale and his voice shaking. Sir, they're not breaching from the outside. Thorne turned sharply. What? Internal motion sensors triggered, sir. Whoever it is, they were already inside. The room went cold. Thorne's eyes found mine across the chaotic room. A silent order passed between us. South wing, he commanded. Take Sanchez. Move. I didn't need to be told twice. I grabbed my sidearm from my locker. Sanchez fell in step beside me. And we were gone, our boots pounding against the polished floors as we descended into the shadowed hallways of the South Wing. The main corridors were silent, lit only by the low, flickering hum of the emergency lights. We moved tactically, clearing corners, our senses on high alert. Then I saw it. A ventilation panel near the main security feed, its screws freshly disturbed, with faint scuff marks on the wall beneath it. They've been here, I whispered, my voice tight. Just as the words left my mouth, I heard it, a soft, subtle sound behind us. The scuff of a boot on linoleum. I raised my weapon in one fluid motion. Step out. Now! From the shadows, a figure emerged, dressed in black fatigues, carrying suppressed gear that wasn't standard issue for any Marine unit I knew. He was masked, his intentions unknown. He hesitated for only a fraction of a second before lunging, not at us, but for the corridor behind us. Sanchez fired a warning shot that echoed like a cannon in the narrow hall. The intruder dodged with practiced ease, bolting down the corridor. He's running, Sanchez yelled. I didn't hesitate. I gave chase. The pursuit was a blur of twisting hallways and echoing footsteps, ending when the figure disappeared into the lower maintenance wing. I skidded to a halt at the end of the corridor, my weapon raised, scanning the darkness. That's when I saw it. A small device planted against the main security panel, its single red light blinking silently. It wasn't an explosive. It was a data tap. I yanked it free and turned it over in my hand. My blood ran cold. It wasn't foreign tech. It wasn't a random act of sabotage. It was U.S. military issue. Someone inside our own system had authorized this breach. By dawn, the alarms were silent. The intruder had vanished, leaving behind no casualties, no stolen equipment, just a handful of planted devices and 1,000 unanswered questions. Back in the operations room, I placed the device on the table with a sharp clink. This wasn't an attack, I said, my voice steady. They weren't here to destroy anything. Thorne's expression was grim. No, he said quietly. They were testing us. Testing you. Across the room, Lieutenant Jensen stepped forward hesitantly. His arrogance was gone, replaced by a raw, humbled respect. I didn't know, he said softly, his eyes meeting mine. I studied him for a long moment, my face unreadable. Finally, I spoke, my voice devoid of malice or triumph. A simple statement of fact. Now you do. As dawn broke over Fort Sheridan, I stood under a rain-soaked awning, staring into the misty horizon. The call sign they had buried years ago was alive again. And someone out there had wanted to see if Iron Wolf had gone soft. They were wrong. I wasn't here to fit in or impress anyone. I was here to lead, and this time, the whole base knew it. This experience taught me that true strength isn't about proving yourself to others. It's about holding true to your own mission and standards, especially when no one is watching or understands. My past wasn't a secret to be hidden. It was the very forge that had shaped me into who I am today. I am no longer Iron Wolf hiding as a medic. I am simply myself, complete and unwavering. Have you ever been in a situation where you were deeply underestimated because of your appearance, your job, or your background? What would you have done if you were in my shoes, facing that daily mockery? Do you believe a person's value is defined by the labels others give them, or by the silent, difficult work they accomplish? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If my story touched you or made you rethink the meaning of respect, hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories like this. Share this with someone who is quietly persevering, waiting for their moment to prove who they truly are. I read every single comment you leave, and your stories matter to me. More incredible, true stories from my life are waiting on your screen. Watch those next, and I'll see you tomorrow with another story that changed everything for me.